You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 212. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where we talk about what really happens when you take a break from drinking. And it turns out to be the best thing you've ever done. I'm Anna, coach to high achievers who are done waking up with regret and ready to feel in control around alcohol. If you've ever wondered what your life could look like with less wine and more you're in the right place. Hi all, I apologize if this little bit of the audio sounds a little different than usual, but I just wanted to make an addition and drop on and say that next Thursday, the 29th of January, I'm hosting a free training called What to Do After Dry January. So it actually matters, right? Whatever level of success you've had with Dry January, or even if you wanted to do it, but you were too afraid or whatever came up for you, I'm going to be talking about what to do after January ends. This is going to be held, on Thursday, the 29th of January at 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 7 p.m. GMT UK time. I do hope to see you there. The registration link for this will be in the show notes, or you can email Anna at 90dayslater.co for it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, my topic is redefining the problem. And you might be thinking, what are you on about here, Anna? My problem is clear. I drink too much, or maybe I don't know how to stop, or maybe I can't say no, or maybe I'm so influenced by other people, or maybe I'm a daily drinker. I know exactly what the problem is. And it is basically something along the lines of I consume too much wine, or whatever your drink of choice is. Now, this is what a lot of people think. They think that their drinking problem is alcohol, right? They believe the issue is things like, I drink too much, I can't stop once I start, I have no willpower. I was once in that place, right? I was convinced it was that the alcohol and the fact of the drinking, that was the problem. So what we do though, and I just want you to think about this, and that might be you, right? No judgment here. When you're in that position, I want you to see that how do we then try to fix our behavior, right? Because if we have a problem, we then want to, resolve that. Here's what, and I see this over all of the message boards, and this podcast is coming to you towards the end of January, maybe beginning of February. I'm not sure exactly. I'm recording this ahead of time. But here's what a lot of people will do, or the general advice is given. Remove all alcohol from the house. Avoid going out. Promise yourself you're going to be good. Focus on discipline, right? Tell your partner not to drink. Tell other people not to have drink around you. All of these things, right? We're just trying to control the action that we're taking. But your actions do not just happen, as I've covered many times on the podcast. Our actions don't happen kind of standalone. They don't just spontaneously happen, even though you might think, no, Anna, it's true. I was fine, and then all of a sudden I was drinking. I used to always say that I would be watching EastEnders. Yes, that is it's one of those programs. I don't know. I know. You've probably got all the thoughts on it. Those of you who know EastEnders, and I'd be totally fine. And then there'd be a scene in the Queen Vic, and they'd be pouring the wine, and I'd think, that's a good idea, and I'd be pouring my wine for myself. I actually wasn't aware I was thinking that's a good idea. I just think, all right, I'm going to do that now. Now, our actions do not just happen. They don't just happen from nowhere. They are driven by our thoughts. They come through our emotions and our beliefs. And this is all about needs that our brain is trying to meet for us, right? And when we try to fix the behavior, we try to fix the action, we try to just change the action, we're going to change the action of not picking up the glass without redefining the real problem underneath it, we are going to stay stuck. It is going to be at best surface level. And yes, you might be able to do this. I know I have heard of people who spend the rest of their lives saying, I'm just going to say no, I've just got to be strong, right? They basically willpower their way through it. But if you're one of those people who's been really, really good, and then all of a sudden you're kind of like really, really bad again, and we go back to drinking, this is what's going on, right? We're not understanding what problem the alcohol thinks it's solving. We can't do that. We just stay at the action, at the level of the actions we're taking. So we need to go deeper. But there's a bit of a trap here, right? You might have heard this. You need to go deeper. You need to find the real reason why you drink. What's your compelling why? Why do you do this? Why? And so then you have a go at doing that, and you come up with things like, I drink because I'm stressed. I drink because my friends all drink. I drink because I come from a heavy drinking family. I drink because I need relief. I drink because life is overwhelming. Right? We come up with these other quote unquote reasons. And yes, this can feel insightful for a moment, but then what? Right? That's what I always say. What then? Right? If you're drinking in response to stress, you've got a stressful job. I still have that job. I mean, the stress is not going to just magically go away. And maybe you drink because you were overwhelmed with all your responsibilities. It is very common for my clients who come to me where they're in super high achieving jobs, they're caring for elderly parents, and then they also invariably have children, maybe teenagers or just going into college. I mean, we've got all of the things, right? We have all of the responsibilities. Those responsibilities are not going away. Right. So hang on. So if I'm drinking because I'm overwhelmed, but what's going to happen then? I'm still going to be overwhelmed because my responsibilities aren't going away. So I'm still going to be drinking. But we can't just delete these things from our lives. We can't delete people, events, feelings from our lives. So even if you go to that little bit, that level deeper, what often happens, I find, is that you end up right back where you were. Where you started thinking, well, this is just bad, I should be able to stop. And then you went deeper, but you didn't actually redefine anything. And so now maybe you're drinking more than ever, right? Maybe you just named something. You gave it a label that you now can't remove. I'm stressed because of all these things in my life. But here's what I want to offer. Stress, for instance, as one of the emotions, is not the problem. It is just the first explanation your brain offers. When you stop at that level, you're going to get some insight, but you are not likely to resolve exactly what's going on, right? You're not redefining the problem deeply enough. You're still going to stay stuck. Because the truth is, alcohol is never the real problem with the people I work with, right? And we're talking about people who are not drinking in order, we're not drinking because if we didn't, we would have some physical, reaction, some physical withdrawal, right? If you are in the category where if you stop drinking, you'd have physical symptoms. I mean, that's a medical doctor territory. But the people I work with, who we have our lives together, but just drink a little bit too much, or maybe you think a lot too much alcohol, whatever the number is, alcohol is never the real problem. I say it is a strategy your brain has learned, that you have taught your brain, right? It's a way to cope. People say, this is my coping strategy. Maybe it's a relief strategy. Maybe it's a reward strategy. It's how you reward yourself for a job well done. You didn't even know you were doing it. And now with the idea of removing it, you see what you were doing. It's a numbing strategy when you just don't want to really this is beyond coping. It's like, I just don't even want to think about this. Or a social safety strategy, right? I feel really socially awkward, so I'm going to drink, and then I don't feel so awkward. That was me, right back in the day in the big corporate events. And maybe it's also just a habit, right? So we teach that this is my kind of like my habit strategy. This is how I just go through life. As I had a client, she would drink a bottle of wine a day, and when the wine finished, the bottle finished, she didn't want more because it was that strategy had completed when the bottle was empty. So what's happening though beneath the ways this shows up, these so-called strategies, that your brain is always trying to solve something, right? Our brains love to get answers to what's going on. Your brain might be solving, how do I relax? Right? How do I feel less stressed? How do I switch off? How do I feel better? How do I cope with discomfort? How do I cope with my boss? How do I cope with the fact that I'm being pulled in 15 directions and overwhelmed in my life? And wine then just becomes the solution your brain has practiced. And it is not because you are weak. It is not because you have this particular problem. This is totally normal. It's because it works very quickly. Our brain repeats what works, and wine is very, very, very efficient at giving us that relief. Right? We can get relief for other ways. That seems like quite a turn off for the brain because wine is quick. So the problem isn't drinking, right? The problem is not drinking. The problem is the unmet need driving the drinking. And if we don't redefine that properly, the behavior is never going to change, or at least change for very long. So one of the most powerful things I've learned from my own coach is the idea that a well-defined problem is a problem half solved. And I just want you to think about this. Right? Most people think the problem is, for instance, I drink too much, but that is just the outcome. That is the action we are creating. The real problem might be, I don't know how to switch off. I'm uncomfortable feeling my emotions. The number of people who tell me I just don't know how to feel my feelings. I don't want to feel the feelings, or people tell me I'm not a feelings guy, or I'm just not used to feeling my feelings. I see all of this. Right? Maybe the real problem also might be I'm using wine to mark a transition. I see this a lot, right? Where we're going from work to home life, and we're going like at 100 miles an hour, and we want to be going at 10 miles an hour in our home life. We want to kick back and relax. So we have the wine as a tradition, and we're relying on wine to cope with pressure or people. So those are the real problems. The problems, things like the transition. How do we deal with the emotions? How do we see ourselves in our own lives? And when we redefine the problem, solutions appear, right? Solutions appear, because now we're solving the cause, not attacking the symptom. And I always say that when we understand the cause and we work on that, the drinking less happens. We get agency over our actions by getting agency over our thoughts. This is why when I'm working with people, we don't spend a huge amount of time, at least after the first few weeks, talking about wine. I mean, people assume coaching with me is all about talking about wine or the beer all the time. That's all we talk about. But we actually don't spend a whole lot of time talking about that, really, right? We talk about things like your reasons, your emotional patterns, your thoughts, your conditioning, your habits, your identity, right? Because once we see what alcohol has been doing for you, we can replace that with tools that actually meet the need you are facing. That is when drinking becomes optional, not forced and not controlled. The way I like to put it is irrelevant, where it's really, I could have it, but I don't really see the need for it. Or maybe you have it, but you have it for a very good reason. Let me give you a good example of working with somebody. Obviously, they will remain anonymous, but this was what happened. I worked with a client who believed that her drinking was all about overwhelm. When she first came to me, it was all about the overwhelm. She had a huge job. She had these parent caring responsibilities, and all the legal stuff that goes with that, being responsible for the mother, grown-up children, the mental load. We had sort of all of the generations she felt responsible for, and wine had become the relief. Right, that was how it showed up, daily drinking. Right, because I get to the end of the day and then and it's because of the overwhelm. Now that looked like the problem. That was how she presented. But here's the thing, once we looked through this and we kind of went through, looked at the overwhelm, looked at the life, looked at what was happening, and made some changes, and I supported her through managing that overwhelm without drinking, another layer appeared underneath. Right, another emotional driver we hadn't seen yet, it was using wine as a solution for another unmet emotional need. And I like to say it's a bit like clearing out a cupboard or a wardrobe, right? You have all the stuff on the top. It's the stuff that you see. Oh, I've got to sort out those old jumpers or those old blouses. I mean, they're just dumped there. Right? Once we then start dealing with that, we see all the stuff that was stuffed at the back of the cupboard, right, that we hadn't seen, and over time it's been pushed further and further back, and then we forget it's even there. Everything hidden becomes visible as we start to remove the clothes and the stuff at the front of the cupboard. And that is how I like to see how coaching works. It's kind of layer by layer. We redefine the problem until alcohol is no longer the solution. And it's fascinating how this happens. This happens, by the way, this works with negative and positive emotions. If you're someone who only drinks to keep the party going, or because you're celebrating and it's all good, and it's like, I'm not drinking to numb negative feelings, the same applies, by the way, right? These layers of emotional, the way the emotions show up. So here's your little bit of coaching homework. Yes, I know I like to give homework. Here's what I want you to try this week. When you feel the urge to drink, right, whenever that is, I want you to pause and ask, what problem am I trying to solve right now? And get a piece of paper and answer it. Right? What problem am I trying to solve right now? Maybe you'll say it's my stress, or maybe it's just I'm hacked off with life. I just want some time for me. Whatever it is, don't edit yourself, whatever comes up. And then ask, what do I think alcohol will do for me here? What will this glass of wine do for me? Will it give you relief, a sense of switching off, right? Of comfort, escape, confidence maybe? This question, the more we look at this, what do we think alcohol will do? This is going to help you to start redefining the problem. And then once you start to understand really what's going on, that's when we can create more awareness. And that awareness is the thing that opens the door to real change. If you want help uncovering and redefining the real problem behind your drinking, this is exactly what we do together in coaching. We are going to dismantle the strategy your brain has learned, and we're going to build ones that actually serve your life. You can get access to me by booking a free discovery call. There's a link in the show notes, or go to 90dayslater.co and click on book a call. And together we will figure out what alcohol has really been doing behind the scenes. And I'll build you the path forward so that to create a life where it no longer does that thing. Because I want you to remember, alcohol was never the real issue. It is not the wine, it is the issue. It's your brain that has been trying to solve something the only way it knew how. Until now, until you found this podcast. When you redefine the problem, the solution becomes clear. That, my friends, is where freedom begins. For me, this is all about freedom. Freedom to live and operate fully in a world where alcohol is everywhere, and not have that make the slightest difference to how you want to run your life. All right. So I want to encourage you to reach out and book that call with me, get time on my calendar. If you don't find a time, by the way, in the calendar that works for you, send me an email, anna@90dayslater.co. I work with people all around the world. So, sometimes we need a little work to figure out the time zones, but I always get a solution. I look forward to that. Otherwise, I will see you here next week. If this episode hit home and you're ready to explore what life could look like with alcohol in the back seat, let's talk. I work with people one-on-one who are ready to create the relationship with alcohol that works for them, so they feel powerful in their choices and at peace with their habits. Go to 90dayslater.co and click on book a call, or grab one of the free guides in the show notes to this episode. And if this podcast is helping you, a rating or review goes a long way to help others find this work too.